Hello guys, welcome to today's session. This is Abdul here to help you through your preparations in zoology. Today we'll be learning about the very important topic, that is exchange of gases, from the chapter breathing and exchange of gases, a crucial part in the unit of human physiology. So without any further ado, let us start today's session. As I always tell you, in order to remember or achieve perfection in any of the units, what we have to do is always ask two questions to the topic. The first one is why, the second one is how. So today we will be learning about how part of the equation, as in how is this oxygen reaching the lungs and it is responsible for various metabolic activities for body. So let's start today's session. Exchange of gases. Now this exchange of gases is a passive phenomena. When I say it is a passive phenomenon and the work is being said to be done, then it is understood that there is some other driving force in this. Now what could that driving force be? The driving force, I'll call it as takes place on the basis of partial pressure. Now do you know what partial pressure is? No, right? Okay, let me help you with this one. Partial pressure is a pressure exerted by the molecules of all the gases when they are present in a mixture. Let us say this is a system, this is a closed system and it contains molecules of various gases. This is molecule of one kind of a gas, there is another kind of a gas, and then there is another gas. Let us say this is another gas molecules. Let us call these blue ones to be as nitrogen, the one in black to be as oxygen, the one in red to be as any other gas. Let us consider carbon dioxide or something like that. Now when these mixture of gases are present, we know that the air is homogeneous mixture of gases. Now when these mixture of gases are present in a system, obviously these molecules will be interacting with each other, and when they are interacting with each other, some kind of pressure will be generated. Yes or no? Okay. Now when I am considering the molecules of oxygen and the pressure exerted by them on the molecules of carbon dioxide as well as the molecules of nitrogen, then the pressure generated by sum total molecules of oxygen will be called as partial pressure of oxygen. Similarly, partial pressure of carbon dioxide, partial pressure of nitrogen, they all do exist. For our today's learning, for the topic, we need to be concerned of only oxygen, partial pressure of oxygen and partial pressure of carbon dioxide. So I'll give you the values of partial pressure of oxygen in different locations of our body, and then I'll tell you how these will diffuse out into the body at various locations. Partial pressure of oxygen can be represented as PO2. Similarly, partial pressure of carbon dioxide can be represented as PCO2. Now, partial pressure of oxygen in alveolar air, happens to be at 104 mmHg, millimeters of mercury. We always measure these in terms of millimeters of mercury. Similarly, PCO2 in alveolar air happens to be at 40 mmHg. Okay. Partial pressure of oxygen in oxygenated, freshly oxygenated blood happens to be at 95 and PCO2 happens to be at 40. Similarly, in tissues, partial pressure of oxygen stands to be at 40 and partial pressure of carbon dioxide stands to be at 46. And the last one, that value we need to remember, is in deoxygenated blood. The partial pressure of oxygen is 40 again and the partial pressure of carbon dioxide will be 46. Now what I'll do for our understanding is that we will consider the body in terms of a system, entire system. I'll represent the entire body in terms of a system and we'll try to understand how the gases are diffusing from the alveoli to the oxygenated blood, from the oxygenated blood to the tissues. Similarly, how the carbon dioxide is diffusing from tissues to deoxygenated blood, from deoxygenated blood to alveoli. So let me represent the structures. This is an alveoli for illustration purposes, and I'll represent the entire body with a system. Now this is a box, means what I am trying to tell you is entire circulatory pathway inside our body in terms of a system. Okay. Now what happens here is, what was the partial pressure of oxygen in alveoli? This is alveoli, and the PO2 in alveoli was 104 millimeters of mercury. Similarly, PCO2 was at 40 millimeters of mercury. Now before we can move any further, what I would like to tell you is, remember the key concept of diffusion of gases. That is, the gases will always diffuse from the region of their higher concentration to region of their lower concentration. Please keep this in mind, it is very important. We saw partial pressure of oxygen is 104 in alveoli. Similarly, what comes from here to here, this is the blood circulatory pathway. So from the blood vessels, from the alveoli to the blood capillaries, what diffuses is oxygen. Therefore, this part will be the oxygenated part. So this is PO2 in oxygenated blood will be 95 and PCO2 will be 40. From the lungs through pulmonary vein, the blood reaches to the left side of the heart, left atria, left ventricle. From there it goes into the aorta, that is the systemic aorta. So this region will be somewhere aorta. Again in aorta, as it is carrying oxygenated blood, PO2 will be 95 and PCO2 will be 40. Let us consider an organ where this blood is being transported. This is an organ, let us consider this to be the cells of the liver. And as we know, liver is involved in metabolic activities, various metabolic activities. Therefore, a lot of oxygen is required. So when the oxygenated blood vessels reach nearby the liver, already we know the partial pressure of oxygen and carbon dioxide in liver, because they have already utilized oxygen. So the stock PO2 in tissues will be 40, PCO2 will be 46 millimeters of mercury. When I say so, what should diffuse out here technically from aorta or from the blood vessels that are nearing to this liver? It is obviously the oxygen will come out. This is the second level of exchange. First one occurred here, second one being occurring here. Why simple ratio, simple analysis? Because 95 in oxygenated blood and 40 in tissues. So lower concentration, higher concentration. Obviously from the oxygenated blood, the oxygen will diffuse out into the tissues. So what should technically diffuse back from the tissues is the carbon dioxide. Why is carbon dioxide going out? Because again PCO2 concentrations of carbon dioxide are 46 and PCO2 concentrations of carbon dioxide in oxygenated blood are 40. So there is a difference of 6 units. Obviously the PCO2 will go into from the tissues to the blood circulatory system. So refined values or the fresh values of PO2 in deoxygenated blood now become 40 and PCO2 values now become 46. Now this blood is collected by respective veins. From these veins they go and dump into the right side of the heart through superior and inferior vena cava. Right side of the heart, right atrium receives deoxygenated blood. From there it goes to right ventricle. From right ventricle it goes to pulmonary artery that carries and only artery that carries deoxygenated blood to both the lungs. So what is the value of PO2 and PCO2 in pulmonary artery? As it is carrying deoxygenated blood, it is again standing at PO2 happening to be 40 and PCO2 standing to be at 46. So the same blood reaches here and from here what goes into the alveoli is the carbon dioxide. So I hope this is clear so far. However, I will like to summarize once again what we understood here, what we tried to understand. Okay, just pay attention if you haven't paid attention so far. So now what we are trying to understand is the phenomenon of exchange of gases being a passive phenomenon without involvement of any energy expenditure. So this entire phenomenon is driven by partial pressure. So we have concerned about partial pressure of oxygen, that is represented by PO2, and carbon dioxide, that is represented by PCO2. I have given you the values of PO2 and PCO2 at different locations in our body already. So alveolar air it is 104, oxygenated blood it is 95, tissues it is 40, deoxygenated blood it is 40, that is PO2. Similarly PCO2 is 40 in alveolar air, 40 in oxygenated blood, tissues it is 46 and deoxygenated blood also it is 46. Now see, I told you to remember about diffusion. The gases will always diffuse from the region of their higher concentration to their lower concentration. Similarly, gases will move from the region of their higher partial pressure to region of their lower partial pressure. So simple thing, 104 in alveoli, oxygenated or deoxygenated blood 40, both the values being less. So deoxygenated blood is 40. Obviously the oxygen will diffuse from the alveoli into the deoxygenated blood, thereby making it oxygenated and bringing the value up to 95. This oxygenated blood is taken up by the pulmonary veins, moved to the left side of the heart. From the left side of the heart it goes to the systemic aorta. In systemic aorta, again as it is carrying oxygenated blood, we can still find the values, that is PO2 at 95, PCO2 at 95. Let us say this aorta branches out and reaches a particular organ. In this case we have considered example of liver. As it divides into minute capillaries and it reaches nearby the organ, what happens is the oxygen from the circulatory system diffuses into the tissues. Why? Because in the tissues the value is PO2 is 40. So PO2 here is 95, 40 difference is there, oxygen will go from circulatory system to the tissues. Meanwhile, we will also concentrate on PCO2 as PCO2 is 46 and 40 in oxygen in tissues and oxygenated blood respectively. So the carbon dioxide will diffuse from the tissues back into the blood circulatory system. So now deoxygenated blood has these values, PO2 at 40, PCO2 46, collected by veins, goes to the right side of the heart through superior and inferior vena cava. right atrium, right ventricle, then goes to pulmonary artery. Again pulmonary artery carrying deoxygenated blood, that is 40 and 46 respectively. So this 46 having in deoxygenated blood, 40 having in alveoli, carbon dioxide will diffuse out. So this is our today's topic. Now one last bonus I'd like to give you guys from my side. What kind of question can they ask? Very complicated, very tricky question is where they'll be asking the values of oxygen, that is partial pressure of oxygen is maximum in which of the given options. Option A, let us consider alveolar air. Option B, it is oxygenated blood. Option C, it is exhaled air. And option D, it is deoxygenated blood. They are asking among given options in which of the following is maximum value of PO2, maximum PO2. Now we know these values for the rest of the three. Alveolar air, it is 104, oxygenated blood is 95, deoxygenated blood it is 40, but we don't know what is exhaled air, how much it is. The correct answer for this answer, the question, will be option C, that is exhaled air. Why? Exhaled air contains 116 millimeters of PO2 concentrations. Why? Because we have already learned some amount of air could not reach the alveoli, and we call that air as anatomical dead space. So that air also is containing oxygen, and when we are exhaling air, along with the exhaled air, deoxygenated air, the remaining part of the oxygen that was left in the conducting system also contributes. Therefore exhaled air is having 116 mm of Hg. A very tricky question. I have made it rather easy for you guys. So stay tuned until next session. Take care.